All right, welcome back. Let's start exploring the extracellular matrix here. So, the extracellular matrix, we haven't really defined it, but we'll define it here. So, really, when we talk about the extracellular matrix, we're really meaning proteins and structures outside of the cell that the cell will attach to. And this is a physical scaffold that the cells will utilize to adhere to move through, to move around, to grow on top of. As most of our cells in our body need some sort of physical connection. They are adhered cells. They are not in suspension as in a liquid or a particle in a liquid. The only exception to that rule are like any cell type that's found to be floating in our bloodstream, erythrocytes or red blood cells, some immune cells, and so forth. But most other cells in our human body need to be adhered to the extracellular matrix, which is really comprised of three major components: protein fibers, some sort of the ground substance, and a fluid, right? Because again, most of our body is a fluid. When we talk about protein fibers in this extracellular matrix, we're really referencing there's multiple different types of proteins you can find at varying levels of concentrations that really define the properties of the extracellular matrix. Collagen versus your skin, or cartilage versus your skin, and so forth. But like collagen, elastin, are two main proteins found in the extracellular matrix. So collagen, there's tons of different types of collagen, and the type that we're looking at there's 26 different genes for collagen, right? So 26 different proteins. There's 25 different genes, 26 different proteins of collagen. Where genetics can be weird like that. But depending upon what collagen you're looking at, can tell you what kind of extracellular matrix you're looking at and where you can find it in the body. So the properties of collagen, it's pretty strong. It is somewhat flexible and inelastic, meaning it does not stretch very well like a rubber band, right? A rubber band is elastic. Collagen's not like that. There's reticular. This fills kind of spaces in between the tissues and the organs. It's kind of a fine collagen form. Then there's elastic, returns the shape, and so forth. The ground substance of the extracellular matrix is made up of hyaluronic acid. I joke about this a lot. There's a beauty treatment commercial on TV. They go hyaluronic acid. It's just hyaluronic acid, right? It's a polysaccharide, meaning it's what kind of the four biomolecules? Right, it's a carbohydrate, right? So it acts as a lubricant, right? An example of this is the white part of your eye. It's the vitreous humor of the eye. There are proteoglycans, so there are proteins that are attached with long polysaccharides, which those saccharides are called glycosaminoglycans. Okay, right? How many glycans can we get in a sentence? But these really are an example, like proteins are attached to a part of hyaluronic acid, right? The purpose of this is to trap large amounts of water for cushioning. So like your meniscus has a lot of proteoglycans in them to attract water into your meniscus and your knee to make it more cushiony, to cushion physical forces. Then you have other adhesive molecules, chondronectin, osteonectin, fibronectin. These are proteins that are in specific tissue types that help those cells in that tissue adhere to the extracellular matrix themselves. So moving on, when we talk about the classification of connective tissue, there's embryonic connective tissue where there's the mesenchyme stem cell, and then of course there's mucosal connective tissue. This is found in these are connective tissues found in the embryo, right? So embryonic connective tissue, kind of two forms there. Then when you talk about adult connective tissue, so we're born, we've grown, fully matured, we have connective tissue property. Now you could have loose fibers or loose connective tissue where the fibers or protein fibers are relatively loose. There's a lot more ground substance, such as like adipose tissue, areolar, like like in your lungs, reticular tissue, and so forth. You can have more dense connective tissue, less ground substance, more proteins, more dense collagen. So that's what it means, dense, regular, or irregular collagenous tissue there. Like an example of that could be like your tendons and ligaments, right? Then you have supporting connective tissue, cartilage and bone. Cartilage is, it's a wannabe bone, but it's not fully bone because it's not ossified. It hasn't calcified. It doesn't have that calcium and some other stuff mixed in. But bone and cartilage are both supporting connective tissue. So they have, like, cartilage is hyaline and fibrocartilage, and it's more elastic, versus bone is really solid. It's spongy or compact bone, two different types. And we'll see that here in a moment. And then especially when we talk about the musculoskeletal system. I think the bones come up in chapter 6 and 7. Then we have fluid connective tissue. So blood is an example of that. Hematopoietic tissue, so red and yellow bone marrow. Has red and yellow bone marrow have lots of adipose tissue in itself. So a lot of these different types of connective tissues are not homogeneous, are not, I guess, one type of connective tissue. Right? It's not singular. Outside of cartilage or tendon, right? It's a pretty complex environment where you have multiple types of connective tissue probably surrounding other types as well. So as with the previous epithelial tissue, I have a bullet point tables pulled from the textbook directly here with examples of all of these organizations of the connective tissue, and I'll go through it pretty quickly here. I don't want to get bogged down in it. So here's an example of a mesenchyme connective tissue. So this is the stem cells, right? Then we have a mucous connective tissue. So example location of that would be the umbilical cord. When we talk about adult tissue, we could have, the areolar connective tissue, loose packing and widely distributed, muscles, nerves, skin, so forth. Then you have like adipose tissue. So this could be found in your surrounding your mammary glands. It could be in your bone marrow. It could be in your abdomen, right? Adipose tissue is found in a lot of places. There's brown and white adipose tissue. So it changes, but there's yellow adipose tissue. I've also learned it's called white, but we'll stick with the book here. Yellow or brown adipose tissue. Those are, another connective tissue type. Reticular tissue, very fine network of reticular fibers. And then, could be found, like an example, in your lymph nodes or your spleen or bone marrow. And this is really more for preparing the, cells, giving them a house to live in and space. So like your lymphatic tissues or hematopoietic tissues, which are found in your bone marrow. So they need space to, grow and divide and develop into differentiate into other cells. Then we have our dense regular collagenous tissue. So again, tendons, ligaments, and so forth. Maybe the dermis of the skin, organ capsules, the outer layer, the tunica externa of blood vessels is like this. Then you have dense irregular collagenous tissue. So this is kind of like forming more sheaths. It has more tensile strength because it can stretch a little bit more than dense regular. Again, still dermis of the skin, organ capsules, trying to provide more mechanical strength here. Dense regular elastic connective tissue. So this is where you need this tissue where you need it to stretch or do something or move something. So like your vocal cords is a great example of this one. Or you have dense irregular elastic connective tissue. Could be your elastic arteries, like specifically your aorta or any high pressure artery, right? Because it needs to expand to the increasing pressure resulting from a heart contraction, but not burst, but also return back to its normal pre-contraction shape. So a little bit here on our supporting connective tissue, right? An example of the cartilage. Really for cartilage, it's kind of a unique connective tissue in my opinion because it has chondrocytes embedded in it, but not a lot of anything else. It's avascular, aneuronal, meaning there's not little to no blood vessels in it, and there's little to no neurons in it, right? So these chondrocytes are really kind of isolated on themselves, separated from a lot of other things. So because of this, it heals slowly, and that's why, like, when you tear your Achilles tendon or any type of tendon, typically surgery is required versus like a torn muscle or partially torn muscle or even a broken bone. Those have blood supplies, neuronal supply to get the nutrients, to get the cells in there, versus cartilage, it's very dense tissue. So you need a long time for it to heal. And then also, probably improperly lay down your extracellular matrix during that healing process, so you get scar tissue. So the ground substance of this has a lot of proteoglycans, hyaluronic acid, right? This tissue has lots of water in it, and depending upon whether it's a tendon or a ligament, and then has less water than cartilage, versus cartilage has the most than compared to tendons and ligaments. There is a perichondrium, so this is like a dense irregular connective tissue that is around the cartilage. This is where fibroblasts are really living, and they differentiate in the chondroplasts that then are kind of entrapped in the cartilage tissue. There are 3 types of cartilage: hyaline, fibrocartilage, and elastic. Those 3 types depend upon their structure and their function and their location. It changes based upon what they need to do. So again, function determines structure, or structure determines function. You can go back and forth, but I think in this case, really function determines structure. So like hyaline cartilage, you have small collagen fibers, evenly dispersed, typically transparent, found in spaces or lacunae. That's where the chondrocytes will be. Typically allows growth for the long bones, where this region will grow and grow down or away from the bone, leaving areas behind it where it will ossify. We'll learn, or calcify. We'll learn about this when we talk about the musculoskeletal system in the bones. So location, long bones, cartilage rings, respiratory system, costal cartilage around the ribs, nasal cartilage, and so forth. So more supportive of the bone, and then of course like your knee. So it's more of a creates a low friction surface. Then you have fibrocartilage, so it's a little bit more, it's a little less stiff, I should say, than the hyaline cartilage, but it's not as elastic as the elastic cartilage. So it's kind of like this middle ground between the two. So it's really great for cushioning. So like in between your intervertebral discs or your pubic symphysis, So like the place where your hip bones connect, or articular discs, knees, jaw points. It provides great cushioning for any sort of high impact force that you may have. Then there's your elastic cartilage. These is more for not necessarily mechanically loading as the other 2 are. This one's more for like beautification, I would kind of say. So external ears, auditory tubes, something that's not carrying lots of load or forces on it, but it's required to provide some sort of a structure that needs to withstand at least normal movement, right? And that's how I tend to think of it. Again, I'm an engineer, but what can I say? We'll pause the video there. I think that's been long enough. The next part, we'll be talking about the connective tissue in terms of bone.